It's a Monday.
Hello.
Start your day on a Monday with this stuff. What it, I've been living in war for 4 years. Remind me what Mondays are like in America for a moment, if you don't mind. Be a friend like that. What are Mondays like in America?
Probably like Mondays anywhere. Not great. Fine,
Yeah.
I guess.
And when we have Donald Trump who can't stop, I watched the 60 Minutes interview first thing this morning, and I don't know what to say about the guy that we haven't said for a decade now, in a different way. And one of the things you do for my friends who might not know your work, I think you're one of the funny folks on, I see you on Instagram, but there are other places people can see you, like the long form interviews and discussions you have on YouTube, where you're really getting into probably far more into the Christian world that I'm familiar with. And I think the work is good. So welcome
Thank
on a
you.
Monday. It's also
Hey,
important.
I'm happy to be here. This is a better way to start a Monday
Yeah.
than a lot of other ways to start a Monday. So,
Well, we start Mondays sometimes here with missiles and drones, but we did not have this week. So today we're going to talk with a comedic sense. And one of the things that I really wanted to have, not just you, but guys like Steve Hofstetter, that I think we value, is that comedy is one of the weapons that can be used to get through the bullshit right now.
mhm.
And before we get into the history of your book, etc., um, how do you think, trying to be, funny all the time, or is it natural? Number one, is working right now for people who are trying to get through the hellstorm, because I know a lot of people who are very depressed in America, and when they see these videos, they fucking forget that shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think comedy can be hard to come by in certain instances. Like some things are just really dark and I'll think to myself like how on earth does someone make this funny? Like there's a fine line between like being sensitive on certain things and then also just the weight and the heaviness of so many terrible things that are happening in the world.
Yeah,
I mean, I think all of us are probably feeling that anxiety, maybe even like depression that's just kind of underlying life right now. But I do also think that if you take out all the horrors, there's a lot of really ridiculous, funny things that are happening every single day because this administration is pretty incompetent and they do ridiculously funny things that I think can be pointed out. And honestly, we're either going to laugh or we're going to cry. We can do
or
both.
fall apart.
Yeah, or fall apart. And I think it's important that we do both and we can laugh about the absurdities of everything. And that doesn't mean we only laugh. But I also think that especially when you're dealing with authoritarian figures and fascism or just any sort of, high control regime, they don't like being laughed at. And so in a
Yeah.
way, I think it's a way to kind of take our power back and be like, no, like you might be controlling these certain aspects of life, but you're not going to take my joy. And I'm going to laugh when I want to laugh about it.
Yeah, and I think that when you see how they break apart at the slightest ding of criticism. I mean, the littlest bit of criticism, and they go for the jugular against like the most inane journalist who's the nicest person. Who they need those in betweeners. They need those kind of what I think of as sold out journalists who are never going to ask a controversial question at all, and they go for that one instead. I was like, did you just go for the dork in the room? Like, I thought you were supposed to you're supposed to go for, like, the guy from Rolling Stone, like my friend Brian Karem. Like, I'm not surprised they go after Brian. Brian's, like, difficult and in a good way, but they go after the nobodies, and I don't mean that as an insult. I actually mean that they're respectful journalists, but they, um, they lose their shit over the tiniest, pushback from that front row.
Oh yeah, I mean they have very thin skin, so that it's which makes it more fun to make fun of them. I mean, even like Donald Trump in that interview, you might have mentioned this before I got on, but how he was so adamant that he did not fall down. Like, that is such a weird thing to lie about. We saw it on it's on video. Like, it's just, like, the pride that he has to have to insinuate, like, "I did not fall."
I like it when right for it, like, "I'm not a pedophile." He said, "What?" "Yeah." "No, no, no, let's get something straight, Mr. Shooter guy." Like, nothing about the shooting, nothing about other people being shot, supposed terror of the event, but no, straight for the "Wait, he wrote what?" "Yeah." No. That was the biggest tell, like, what he could not wait to confront was like, I don't know if you were ever accused of anything in a manifesto, I have not been, so this is all uncharted territory for me,
Mhm.
but, his tell was huge. Who's your favorite character of all these goofballs? Because
Oh gosh.
you have some that make me laugh, but I don't wanna pick, favorites.
Man, they're
Who
all just
who are
so
who are the ones you just can't wait to do again?
Christy Nome was pretty fun, but I think, probably her time of spoofing has come to an end. Also, Pam Bondi was fun. She's just so aggressive for no for no reason. Um, you know who my favorite probably of both administrations, so if you count the first one, is actually Sean Spicer, the
Oh, I
very
miss Sean
first
Spicer.
the very first press secretary. I have a soft spot in my heart for him because he just came out. I mean, he was as aggressive as Caroline Leavitt, but it was so new, and
Mhm.
he just acted so ridiculous and silly right away, before we realized how, like, what a train wreck the administration would be. Like, Sean Spicer hiding in a bush to hide from journalists might be one of my favorite things about both administra or Sharpie Gate, where,
Sharpie Gate, oh my god.
Trump, do you remember where he said that a hurricane was supposed to hit Alabama, and then the Weather Association said it's not supposed to hit Alabama, and then he literally got out a map where you could see the Sharpie where he extended the, whatchamacallit, the forecast, with
Right,
the
right, right.
Sharpie. Ugh, it's like so many ridiculous things.
And then there was the hurricane that came from over here.
Yeah.
I don't know what they do with these guys anymore down the road because we don't have any accountability. We have a pretty good quorum. Actually, early on Monday, we got 33 people in here, so I'm gonna dive into the past because one thing you said on Steve's, interview, and I thought you guys were great, by the way. I really appreciated running into you was you said, "I have all these secrets in the past. I only wanna know about one. How the hell did you get on James Baker's show singing like that?" Because I think it's for one, I think it's great, to be honest with you, that you brought that up and you talked about that background because I probably watched that episode. And more interesting is I don't come from a religious house. I
Hmm.
used to watch it as, one, I'm from Houston, so you sorta have it around, but sometimes it's just funny.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are things that are on these different, platforms that are, especially when there were only, like, 4 television stations in my youth
Yeah.
before there was cable access, there was, like, Reverend Gene Scott would go on for 7 hours about shit I had no idea what he was talking about, but we would leave it on during parties because it was funny. Somehow in the background while he's going on dispensationalism, we didn't even know what that was, but it was funny.
So you were
Eh
watching it ironically.
Ironically and a bit, um, like sociology, an understanding of what was being said to people around me, you know?
Yeah, so I was invited to sing on the Jim Baker Show as part of my dad's appearance. So, for those who don't know, I was a preacher's kid. My dad was a pastor, my grandfather was a pastor, my dad was also an evangelist, and we were Christian nationalists, though we wouldn't have called ourselves that.
Mhm.
And my dad had written a book called America Say Jesus, which the goal of the book there at the time, there was an open letter to then President George W. Bush to start saying the name of Jesus. And my dad put a prophetic word on top on the cover of the book that said, "Unless America defines her God, which is Jesus Christ, that God would lift the veil of protection that was on our country, and America would experience bloodshed like never before." So
Mm,
we felt this, there was this kind of belief that God allowed things like 9/11 to happen or Hurricane Katrina because we as a nation had allowed sin to come
right.
into our country, which was basically like gay people and abortion and the ACLU. We hated the ACLU. Um, So, being a good little daughter, I had always sang, before my dad would preach and, like, when we would travel as a family, and I wrote a song also called "America Say Jesus" to go along with the book. So, our whole family was on the Jim Bakker show. It was a Father's Day episode. I was 18 at the time. So, my dad was there promoting his book, and then I sang the "America Say Jesus" song to go along with it, and that is my story of how I got on Jim
It's
Bakker.
amazing.
Yeah.
And I get, like, strangely enough, again, because I didn't have a religious home at my house, doesn't mean I don't know religious homes. I was married to a evangelical who was actually the best of all of them, and, when she died of cancer in 2017, and she was the one person I've ever known that I went, "Well, that's faith." Like, literally to the very last moment,
Mhm.
was something that I don't know other people have. She had that. But she also
Mhm.
spoke out against Donald Trump, and she had this side that contradicted sort of the belligerence that I knew that I was fatigued on. I know she was too. Um, and I see that happening now in a lot of different parts of the Christian community, and I don't ascribe to any of this. I want for the viewers to know I don't have a pedigree of any of those things. I respect a lot of different backgrounds. I'm formally trained in 7 schools of Buddhism, read the Bible my whole life, but from a slightly different angle. So when we have these conversations, partially it's so we can, one, see how it affected your life in particular, but also to recognize it has a huge impact on everything that's going on around us right now. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, tell me a little bit about what you see as when it became what we think of now as Christian nationalism, where not so much that it got the tag, but it clearly had momentum in a particular way.
Like, when I started noticing Christian nationalism?
Yeah, either as a term or what was about to become a term.
Got it. So I think I first noticed it in the first Trump administration because I had been a diehard Republican because I grew up in a world, evangelicalism that we were taught if you are a Christian, you vote Republican. There's
Right, right,
there's no like, you cannot vote for a Democrat or a demon rat, as we had often referred to them. Like, you could
right,
not
right.
be a good Christian if you voted for a Democrat. So, there was already this conflation of Christianity and the GOP.
Mhm,
So, I 2016 comes along, and I was still a diehard Republican at the time, and I watched every single primary debate as I did as a good little Christian Republican, and I did not like Donald Trump, and I could not understand why so many of my fellow Christians were seemingly okay with him as a president or as a potential. Because I mean, the primary that year was huge. We had so many options, and especially as, as we got closer to the election, when the Access Hollywood tape came
mhm,
out, and I thought for sure Trump was done. Like, there's
mhm,
no way he's going to get Christian support after that. And I was a never Trumper from the beginning because I was a child of the 90s when, the Bill Clinton scandal, and it was, like, drilled into my brain back then that Republicans Republicans honor character. Character
mm,
matters, and you have to vote for someone with good character, who's a good family man, who would not cheat on his wife, because if a president would cheat on his wife and lie to her, how much worse would he do to the American people?
yeah,
And so I've always just believed, great, yes, Republicans stand for morality and Democrats don't because we didn't like when Bill Clinton did that awful thing. Um, and so I felt like Trump was easily in the same category as Bill Clinton. And
orders of magnitude.
yes, and, yeah, I saw Franklin Graham and people that I had respected come out and defend him and
Mm,
say, "Well, we're not voting for a pastor, we're voting for a president, or Trump's just a baby Christian, like, who among us hasn't sinned?" And I was just really confused because this was the opposite of everything I had ever been taught of what we look for in political candidates. So I was very
But you
vocal.
guys love the redemption story. There's one thing I love about Christians that it's almost a predictable algorithm. If you're down on your luck and things are going bad, create a redemption story and show up somewhere with your redemption story, and they'll build you a house.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at what they're doing with Russell Brand right now, too.
That's a great example, like, and I think for me, it's always been a part where I'm actually protective of my Christian friends or the side of people who have that side because
Mhm.
at its root is a good thing. But it's been abused as long as I can remember. There's been someone who showed up and was like, I was playing guitar for Satan, and then
Right.
Jesus took the beer bottle out of my hand and took my hooker wife and got me a nice Christian wife now. And I'm like, why do y'all buy this stuff? This guy was not in Black Sabbath.
Mm. Yeah, they
That's
love.
that's for Jeff Finholt, who used to tell people he was lead singer for White Snake and Black Sabbath and doing the drugs and people bought it, and people couldn't wait to go see the guy who had just redeemed himself.
Yeah, they love a good, testimony. The problem, though, with Trump is that there was not the repentance part ever. I mean, he was even
Right.
asked if he'd ever asked God for forgiveness, and he said no. And that was before the 2016 election. It's like, "You guys, this is so clear. He is manipulating you all." Um, but yeah, so I kind of vocally started questioning like, "Hey, guys, are we sure we can, like, vote for this man, like, morally and, like, still hold our integrity intact?" Like, I don't think the
Mhm.
means justify the ends here. And the way that I just got berated by my fellow Christians, I was told my late father would be disappointed in me because he had
I
passed away from cancer in
I hate that one.
2011. Yeah, that I was being led astray from by Satan, that I was thwarting the will of God, and I suddenly started realizing, like, the culty aspect of the republicanism and Christianity, and I was like, "You guys, you don't have to vote Republican to be a Christian," and I feel like in this case, we shouldn't vote Republican. Like, I think that would honor our faith more. Um, and so that's when I started questioning, like, all of Trump's first term,
Mhm.
I started noticing the Christian nationalism because it turned from. I feel like initially it was like, well, Trump's just the best option and the lesser of two evils because we could never vote for Hillary Clinton because she stands for abortion. So
And
it
her husband did the thing.
right. That Trump did also, but we didn't talk about that. But it was so funny too. I remember specifically there was one guy because I was questioning, like, how could we support someone as awful as Trump? And someone was like, "Well, God can use anybody. God
How can
uses
you say
sinners all the time."
I
And
love that one.
I couldn't even vote. I didn't even vote for Hillary in 2016 because I hadn't deconstructed the whole idea that a Christian could vote for a Democrat yet. So I voted third party.
That's
But
important.
I even questioned, I was like, "Well, couldn't God use Hillary Clinton then?" They did not like that answer. The answer was no, God couldn't for some reason, but he could use Trump. So, I started
I
noticing.
think it was in Luke chapter 2, verses 8 through 15 when a woman can't tell a man what to do. You heard it in
Mhm.
there. It's the word of God.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of patriarchy involved in Christian
Don't get me started
nationalism.
on Paul. I know about Paul, but
Yeah,
I
well, and then and through Trump's first term, it went from he was a lesser of two evils to he's God's chosen to save Christianity and to save America, and, like, I mean, there were some extreme cases of, like, Trump prophets that came on the scene and people saying that Trump was basically like the second coming of
oh,
Christ's fulfillment, and, like, it was so insane to me, and I was like, "Trump of all people?" Like, I felt like I was constantly being gaslit because I felt so sure, like, in my spirit and being that Trump was a terrible human, like, never deviated from that, but I was still going to church with all the people that
mm,
loved him, and I could not. I started getting angry when I would go to church because we would be singing these worship songs about a Christ who loved the marginalized people, who stood up for the oppressed, who gave his life for everybody, regardless of skin color, regardless of orientation,
right.
like literally a love thy neighbor Christ. And then I would see during the week what those same people were posting, and it was so hateful and so anti-Christ, really. that
Yeah.
I had a hard time reconciling, okay, something's off here because the Jesus I'm reading about, you cannot be following that guy.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so then actually named Christian nationalism because I started seeing that term floating around. I think, I mean, it's been around for a while, but I mean, Christian nationalism has been around before the term has been around,
Right.
and I do
But
think
just that's why I wanted to see how you saw it coming
yeah.
from, like, being in that environment, and some of what you're saying reminds me of someone very, that was close to me many years ago that, we were in the dating thing. We never got beyond dating, but I said, "So, what's your religion or something?" "Oh, I'm Catholic." "Why are you Catholic?" "Well, because my parents are Catholic." "Oh, well, what party are you?" "I'm Republican." "Why are you Republican?" "Because my parents are Republican." "Why? What are you?" And I didn't have any of those things to bind me, so wasn't like I thought about what my parents' politics were because it was never a thing, so
Mm.
I didn't have that. And I found it interesting to have someone who literally the identity was inherited. Here's what your identity was, and it obeys these rules. And the truth is, the rest of her life matched none of that. Like what she liked to do in life as a person, if you took those ingredients away, was a completely different person. And therefore, in some ways, I would say bound by those intellectual shackles early on that said, this is your party, this is your form of this particular religion. No less, it's not just that you're Christian, it's you're this type and that with that creature at that time, just like that one. And that's it. And that's what you are, you know. So when you have to grow up within it and then emerge out, it's a very different experience.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of kinda defense mechanisms that are put in place to keep people inside, to keep people from
Sure.
seeing things because, like, when you question it, you immediately get demonized by everybody in your community, um, and then you d like, but, if you never deviate or question, you have no reason to think that the people around you,
Hmm.
are in a cult because you're also like, you don't see it until you see it, but, oh my gosh, once you see it, it all unravels quite quickly.
What is tell me one of the big ones you saw, some real big thing you saw, whether it doesn't have to be about Trump, it could be about the group at large that you had always been close to, that you now said, "Oh my god, like, everyone does not see that this is happening." What was a big one, if you could think of one?
I mean, there's a bunch.
Sure.
I would say, I mean, the two biggest things I think that keep people in a Christian nationalist world, and I want to point out too, most people who perpetuate Christian nationalism to some degree
Mhm.
don't think they're Christian nationalists. They think they're
Sure.
just being Christians, good Christians, love God, love people, vote Republican. Like
Right.
that's it. Although they don't love all people. And I think that
Sure.
was a big wake up call for me with how the church treated queer people. Um, because my brother, one of my brothers came out to me as gay in
Mhm.
2015. So, right around the time I was questioning things with Trump and everything too. And I just realized what I had been taught about homosexuality, which was that it was someone that had a demon of some sort, and it was something that they chose based on some sort of demonic influence. I knew immediately that my brother, who grew up in the same homophobic world that I did not choose to be gay. And I didn't know what the right answer was, like theologically,
Mhm.
yet, but I knew what I had been taught was wrong. And the way that like all gay people were demonized and the way that you were demonized if you questioned the way church treated gay people, that was very eye-opening for me. And just the hypocrisy of it too with what the Bible actually says about homosexuality versus a myriad of other issues, like divorce, for instance. Like there would
Mhm.
be churches that were totally okay with divorce, despite the fact that Jesus himself actually says something about divorce, that you shouldn't get divorced. But it says nothing about gay people or queer
Mhm.
people. And for the record, I have no issue with divorce, but I was just seeing like the hypocrisy of things that
Sure.
the Bible condemns that, based on certain interpretations. that they were just very much cherry picking, despite the fact that they said they took it literally. They did not take it literally. They 100% cherry picked based on who they did and did not like.
Yeah, I have an intervention boss that's stuck in my head to take the phone out of my hand when I'm stuck on the videos of people, getting cornered on their beliefs, MAGA. And there's always someone really nice who asks a question. They'll say, "Yeah, so can I ask you some questions?" "Sure, okay. Well, Joe Biden did." "Oh, I'm sorry, that was Donald Trump." And they switch it after they get agreement, and then watch the answer go through that pretzel logic and come out landing on all 4 feet in favor of Trump, no matter what it was.
Mhm.
And they do it over and over again. And I imagine this, cognitive dissonance as painful, but it doesn't look painful to the people going through it. They just change the formula. If
Yeah.
uh, Biden does it, it's god awful. It's the end times because
Mhm.
how dare that old man who's so old and shouldn't be making any decisions at that age. Look how crazy he is. Oh, that was Trump. Well, look, he's working really hard, the best ever. He's he's just working hard for us. Why
Mhm.
do you hate him so much?
Yeah, actually have a theory
Go for it.
for that. So, in so Trump would not have won either term without
Mhm.
white evangelicals. Like, white
Good.
evangelicals
Right.
overwhelmingly still the majority of them still support Donald Trump. They're the only group that the majority of that group still supports Donald Trump
Mm.
is white evangelicals. He's dipped by pretty much
Right.
every other group. Um, and I really think that a huge reason for that is that when you grow up evangelical in the church, you are constantly taught to not touch God's anointed, which is based on a Bible verse that says,
Mhm.
do not touch God's anointed. Basically, meaning that if God has called someone and anointed, usually it's used in terms of a pastor, that
Mhm.
you don't criticize that pastor. That basically what that pastor says is almost like you're hearing from God. And so
Mhm.
don't touch God's anointed means that even if they mess up, it is not our job to condemn because God put them in a place of spiritual authority. And I think and you see so many church abuse where the pastor either like has an affair or is caught in some sort of scandal or is abusive. The people immediately come out to defend the pastor because you don't touch God's anointed, and that verse is used to silence people that
Right.
speak out. And I think that kind of character flaw and learned condition easily translated to Donald Trump. Donald Trump just became
Yeah.
God's new anointed that you could not touch. And so you've already been trained to bend over backwards to find ways to justify men doing terrible things. It was easily just applied to Trump.
Yeah, and there's a cultural thing, and I don't know how wide it is because I see it here in Ukraine, which has been a learning experience for me because 'cause I'm from Texas. We have our own issues, and they're unique and different to us, but they're not in a way. One of them is to be the embarrassment of the family or something. Better to be 1,000 things in life than be the smallest embarrassment of what the family ideal system is, no matter where you're at in the world. You can be in India, you can be in Africa, you can be in, Eastern Europe, and there's some part of it where you're supposed to comply with the pack mentality. And when you
Mhm.
don't, there's that look. Mhm.
Yeah.
And so people comply quietly throughout their lives in some circles more than others. And in the South, I had to explain this to a person that did not understand why she was getting reactions when she was complaining about real issues. I know there were real issues, but around a group of Southern genteel women. And I was there for the entire 2 hours, and she says, "I just don't understand them." And I said, "It's clear that you don't. The more you complain about something, it does not mean that it's not real. It means shut up. They want a happy day. They
Mm.
want things to be genteel and happy and to get along, and you're making trouble. But I'm not making no, no, no. Again, I'm not saying you're at fault for your own trouble, but in their perfect little world, you're bringing trouble. Notice not one of those other people brought a single issue to the table. None of them did.
Mhm.
And she hadn't heard that part because she wasn't conditioned to that particular cultural problem at that moment. Then she went back and thought about it, and she happened to know one particular person in that group the most, and went back to her and said, "I was so sorry for offending, your group." And she said that's when the other person finally let it out that she was terribly broken inside, that all these things were happening, but she couldn't
Mm,
let it out in that circle, right? Because the
mhm.
cultural overlay was so heavy. And she says, "Well, why didn't you say something then?" She goes, "Well, it was a little untoward." And it's sort of that, like, you have to behave inside the circle as well. There's pressure in that, yeah, and especially in the, religious communities, even more so.
Oh, yeah, and especially for women too, 'cause even in more egalitarian environments, there's still kind of this understood thing that women need to act ladylike and
Mm.
to not use their opinion too much because really a man's is more important. Like, if you a woman who has an opinion well, like, a man who has an opinion is a strong leader. A woman who has an opinion has a Jezebel spirit and needs to be, you know, controlled.
This is why I didn't understand the church all along.
Mhm.
I always thought it was cooler the other way around. What do you think about because here's a one that doesn't make sense in that pantheon is, Paula White, who I'm a bit
Mm,
obsessed with the story of some of these people because they're just so strange, but they're not strange to me when I've seen, hucksters like this in Texas, and Florida. She's from Florida. But if it was clear that the, most extreme voices saying women should never lead the flock,
mhm.
well, what's she doing up there? And boy, is she not doing it on something. I don't know what she, has before she starts her, uh, her sermons, but it's at least 2 Red Bulls
Yeah, well, I
or
think
Monsters or something.
she was one of Trump's early, early, early supporters, even before I think he ever ran for politics, like, they became friends, so
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because Donald Trump is not a Christian nationalist. I mean, I don't think he believes in anything other than
No, he
himself.
doesn't, yeah.
So
Staying
he
out of
doesn't know.
prison.
Huh?
He's in stay out of prison mode. That's the
Yeah,
only
oh,
thing.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. I mean, he's textbook
That's it.
narcissist.
Yeah.
He doesn't know the ins and outs of Christian nationalism. He doesn't know that there are extreme sects that do not want women not only leading, but that wanna take away a woman's right to vote. Like Pete
Right.
Hegseth's church pastor, Doug Wilson,
Yeah.
wants to repeal the 19th Amendment. So but Trump doesn't know that. So him I don't like Paula White. I think she's a grifter. I don't like that there's a White House faith office, but I do like that there's a woman leading that because all the Christian nationalists that attend these events, it's gotta be killing them on the inside that a woman is in charge of their group.
Right.
Um, but I also know like, I don't understand how Paula doesn't speak out more on that front too, because there are plenty of men that sit at that table with her that would take her right away, like, if they could,
Yeah.
immediately.
Well, let me get to the broadcasting that you're doing, and, if you don't mind telling our viewers who might not know what you're doing with your broadcasting, um, I find it interesting that you're discussing parts of what's happening inside the Christian community that I just would never hear about. It's not conversation that will ever show up on CNN, MSNBC. It's not gonna be a Wall Street Journal article about, "Look at the new faces of Christian." It's none of that's gonna happen, but it's kind of there. Um And it's
Mhm.
an interesting conversation in my book, you know,
Yeah, so
to learn from.
I've got my own channel where I do a lot of comedy stuff, and I have my book called Star Spangled Jesus, which is about my time in Christian nationalism and leaving it
Mhm,
behind, and then I've got my own YouTube channel, but I do a twice a week, we do a YouTube show slash podcast called The Tim and April Show with my co-host, Tim Whitaker, who also comes from, similar background as me. And
mhm.
basically, we talk about current events, what's in the news, but we highlight the Christian nationalism behind it from a progressive Christian perspective. Both of us are still Christians, actually, but very
Mhm.
progressive, very inclusive. So we just like we know the language. So if someone says, you know, like we're praying for this blessing in disguise or whatever
Yeah,
Christianese.
some symbolism that's going on that the rest of us, might not have caught.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
We basically decode the Christian nationalism in the wild, and we tell you what they actually mean by this.
right.
Like someone who says, um, "Love the sinner, hate the sin," or, we want a president that stands for quote unquote biblical values. We will tell you that those biblical values are not actually biblical values. What they mean is Republican values that they have
Right.
twisted. And so we basically just decode Christian nationalism in the wilds and try to tell people what to look out for and what people actually mean when they say certain phrases and things.
I mean, it's gonna sound condescending when I say this, I don't know another way to say this. I think I'm watching a big portion of Christianity grow up, and a side
Mhm,
that always bothered me, that was stuck, in a very isolated, and it's part of the cult issue that happens, isolated information streams. Um, an isolated world that was gonna leave it behind, pardon the pun. Uh, Someone shoot me for that one. I didn't put that one out. But there are conversations in it that I had not expected to hear that I think, remind me, like you said, progressive politics, areas where people talk about needs of the people, what these, choices in life religiously do about our ability to help others.
mhm,
And I'll use one that's not part of that conversation as an example. I have a friend here who's a chaplain for the 36th Marines, and I could tell from the 2 times I'd passed him in public, events that he was interesting, and I just wanted to talk to him, but I don't come from religious pedigree of any kind. I would probably feel the same way if it was a Buddhist monk or someone. I would be interested to talk to him for about a half a second, as many people, but, I wanted to talk to him, and I wanted to ask him, "Well, what is it that you do in this war?" And I didn't wanna get into the religiosity side of it. I just wanna ask him what he does. What is it that a chaplain does in this war? Really simple question. And I love the answer. It was about helping people. He didn't sound like any of the people I ever heard on televangelism. There was no, sort of trite, scriptures coming out of his mouth randomly like I hear scripted in America. He's a regular guy trying to help people who've been through the worst thing you can imagine in life, and he's
mhm.
doing something with it. And I'm like, "That's what I wanna talk about."
Yeah,
That's the part that's most interesting, right?
mhm,
Because the superficial side, which is what's dominating, televangelism news, Fox News, etcetera, is killing people right now.
mhm,
And, so I think that when I see young people, like, now that I've watched some of your videos, to see a lot of the overview of what you've been doing, YouTube thinks that's all I wanna see, so I'm seeing all sorts of related commentary, which is also interesting because now I'm seeing different other people who, again, do not sound like the way I'm used to seeing Christian channels pop up in YouTube. It's different content. It's
mhm,
different examination of these people who are grifting, who are
mhm,
causing, death, who are betraying, the core ethic of what these people believe is the Christian community itself. And I think
mhm.
that's kinda good news, actually.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the gospel is supposed to mean good news, but it
Yeah.
hasn't for so long, if depending, in American evangelicalism, I feel like American Christianity and Americans in general are just loud, but a lot of American evangelicals, they've made their entire faith about what they're against and not what
Mm,
they're for,
mm.
and I just don't think that's a healthy way to live. I mean, the reality is fear sells. And it's
True.
easier to
Exactly.
get people into your group if you can scare them with the fear of hell, if you could scare them with the fear of the rapture, if you could scare them with the fear of Democrats coming in to take away your right to worship. So
Mhm,
rile all these good old Christians up that think they're victims and think they're being persecuted, and that gets more clicks, that gets more views. Whereas like someone like me or like a more progressive Christianity where it's like, hey, we just think we want to have the most human rights for the most people. We want to actually make this world a better place for our neighbors.
mhm.
We don't care if that person converts or not,
Right.
and I think that's a key difference. Like, you have a lot of evangelicals that walk around with the ultimatum. They meet people and they have ulterior motives. They don't actually care if your life gets better. They care if you say a prayer and become one of them. Whereas I
Yeah.
just I want someone to have health care, I don't care what their beliefs are. I think I just yeah, there's just a big difference between wanting to actually help people and wanting someone to say a prayer that makes you feel better because you think you've saved their soul, but then you completely forget about them. It's very similar in the way that they view abortion, right?
Yeah.
They don't actually care
Right.
what happens to that child once it's born. They just want that child to be born. And then they just forget about it and they can fall asleep at night thinking that they saved someone, but really they didn't.
What do you think in the case of some, members that are, like, I don't wanna say they're really lost, but, like, really, really down the rabbit hole? What do you think some of those reward systems are looking like for them now that, Trump is, at war with, Iran, can't seem to figure out where it's gonna end. Gas prices are going up,
Mhm.
cost of everything's going up, and they're still trying to, rationalize the insane around themselves. Do you have people in your life that are, going through that are, really in the squeeze between they still really believe in Trump and they believe in Trumpism and Christian nationalism, and yet, um, the consequences of those beliefs are piling up on their neck.
Yes. So I am still not close friends, but like I see what they post online from my old
Sure.
world and I've seen a mix. There's a lot of people still doubling down,
Mhm.
um, which I think in a lot of ways is easier than admitting that they were wrong about Trump because they'd have to admit a lot of things at this point. And when you're in that world, you want to be the good guy. You think you're the good guy. And so admitting you were wrong about one thing opens the door to realizing you've actually harmed a lot of people. And I just think that's too big a pill to swallow for a lot of them, so they just keep doubling down and just ignore the doubts. But
Yeah.
I actually am seeing there's a decent amount of people that are starting to turn on Trump, that are seeing him for a grifter, and that's probably because, I've people like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Candace Owens have turned on Trump now too, and it's
Interesting allies that I have in the rhetorical mix of these days.
right, and I don't trust them at all, but
Agreed.
I will take if they can help change other people to turn on Trump, we'll take it. I'm not gonna become an ally with them immediately, but, you know, whatever. It's at least some people are speaking out, and the more people that speak out, the more likely people will feel safe to start questioning things and hopefully go down the rabbit hole of leaving this indoctrination completely
Yeah.
behind. Because you have to remember too, a lot of people that are in it they they have a lot of fear, themselves, and
Sure.
that's why they keep having they have a fear of hell that if they don't have the exact right beliefs or if they start to have doubts about things, that they would eventually wake up, become an atheist or whatever, and go to hell. I mean, that's literally a fear tactic that's been used on me. And I know we're talking about politics, but when you are a white evangelical, your
Yeah.
political beliefs and your theological beliefs become completely intertwined. So
Very much so. Right.
questioning one is questioning the other. They're one and the same. So I do feel like a certain amount of people, especially those that like told people their salvation hinged on whether or not they voted for Donald Trump, like, they have a reason to not question it, especially if they're pastors, or if their livelihood is based on holding certain beliefs.
Mm.
They have every reason to not question and to double down.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking about what are my fears, and I like to share them often with our viewers here because they kind of explain how I'm a fucked up human. Over 1,400 and something days of war, and I don't fear eternal damnation. I
Mhm.
fear not having enough uh, cash on hand when I have to pay the concierge, who's about 75, when I pass by the door, because if I don't, she gives me that look. Oh, you forgot. Okay. And every day when I come back by and I'm like, I still haven't gotten any extra cash. I pay everything by card here in Ukraine. And there's that look, and I don't want that look because she's a really nice lady. And
Mhm.
I buy her small peach turnovers as an offering of graciousness to the kind lady who watches the door. Those are my fears. So I extrapolate from there to say, well, what if it was a whole bunch of ladies who were staring at me angry that I didn't pay my, my simple $2 per month to the concierge fee. Uh, I don't have a fear of eternal damnation, but I'll be honest with you, I've seen people who do literally a matrix, like you just said, a huge matrix of choices that unravel when you pull one factoid out that has to remain in place for their whole worldview to maintain itself. Because inside that worldview is eternal damnation, whatever that means to them, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it becomes sweats level, like literally, don't say that because if that happens, I'm going to hell forever. Um, that's a lot to carry around, especially if
Mhm.
you're at the ballot box or you're at the grocery store and you're trying to make decisions, and the reality of what's in front of you is actually difficult, and yet you better put up that $1,000 prayer, cloth check, or you're a bad Christian, and you're going to have eternal hell and damnation for you. I can't imagine that.
Yeah. I mean, it's heavy. Yeah, I don't think you realize how heavy and exhausting that mindset is until you leave it.
Hmm.
And then you look back and you're like, "Oh my gosh, how did I carry that for so long?"
So let's tell. I want to tell the friends about your book itself. What did you cover in there that I know you don't want to give away? You want them to read it. So everyone, do not buy used copies. This is my only rules in the room. Don't buy used copies. Go on Amazon and get like a new copy so she gets credit towards Hatchet Books.
Yeah. Yeah, the book is
I'm the
Star
Monday book pimp. Here we go.
the
Let's
book
do it.
is, Star Spangled Jesus. Oh, here, I have it here, I'll show you.
Good,
Hold
good.
on. This is it. Star Spangled
Woohoo.
Jesus, Leaving Christian Nationalism and Finding a True Faith. It's basically my story, about leaving Christian nationalism. I have a detailed account of my time singing on the Jim Baker Show on there. It's also funny because I try to be funny in life, so I make Christian nationalism as funny as it could be, which is actually kind of funny.
It
Um,
is.
yeah, I go through basically it's kinda like Christian nationalism 101 from someone who came into it or comes from that world. I go
Sure.
through the tactics of Christian nationalism, the different tenets of Christian nationalism, and then the frontline issues that Christian nationalists use and weaponize to keep people both inside and demonizing outsiders. Um, so yeah, it's available wherever the books are sold. And there's an
E-
audiobook that I
Everyone should. Oh, did you do it?
I did.
Awesome. I
Mhm.
know some of our viewers here love the audiobooks. They love the audiobooks. Everyone loves the audiobooks. I want to see your characters more evolve over time because I didn't get to catch some of your stuff until recently, but I've decided to suspend all of my impressions pending the end of this arrangement of
Mm.
Donald Trump in the White House. I used to do Bush when I was at the radio station. I was the one that had to randomly come in at no notice to do some sort of Bush punchline or answer a question in George Bush voice. Until I basically told him, like, not doing it anymore. Like, we're laughing at him. We're not locking him up. See you. And I'd walk out the room. Distinguished citizens and fellow citizens, Vice President Cheney recently saw significant quantities of uranium from Africa. Um, I mean, these guys were. I mean, even with Bush, it was a lot of humor was keeping us from really kind of taking him seriously. He was an idiot. Everything was about him being an idiot, which means we didn't really do anything. We sort of let him idiot his way through 8 years,
Yeah.
and
I loved George Bush. I was still Republican back then, so
in
I mean, I was, like,
hindsight,
in high
it's not
school.
so bad.
I couldn't vote for him, but I loved him. He was from Texas, I was from Texas.
Yeah.
I was a defender of Bush back in the day.
Mm.
Obviously, hindsight's 2020.
Well, I'm saying though, this is one of the things that bothered me about Trump for the last several years was that I went after Dick Cheney and told people if you don't hold him accountable for his crimes, we're going to have something worse later.
Mm,
And people would say like kill him or some weird shit. I go no, like there's no trial in that. Like you have to have the trial. You have to have the accountability that says essentially no one's above the law. No one really seemed to understand the argument. It didn't happen. And as some high placed people in DC said, there's no stomach for it here, Chris. They're just not interested in accountability. None of them are. Like, not none of them are. And he meant both parties. They're not interested in that. So I think that that still hasn't changed by much. I've got 4 years of watching America from 5,000 plus miles away. America looks very different from here. We have Christianity everywhere here. It is
Mhm.
a very Christian country. There are 3 churches on every block. I almost went over to broadcast from one because it's not far, and I thought it's a bit too much, but it's, everywhere, and I hear Zelensky's cracking down on Christianity. No, he's not. It's impossible. There's no way he would be able to do that. The Babasi will give him that look. "Hey, no shoti. Yeah, you're not gonna let me go to my church." "Yeah, suka." And that'd be the end of that. They'd show up, and they would, they would do their thing. Um, what are some of the, do you only do the videos right now, or do you do any, like, live events?
Um, I do occasional speaking events that I'll post about. I don't have anything currently coming up. Oh, actually, I will be in Sarasota, Florida, May 17th, at Harvest Church there. That's, like, with
Nice.
my YouTube show with Tim. Um, but yeah, mostly I do like, for me personally, I try to do sketches and try to make things a little more lighthearted and comedic online, although sometimes I get mad and I vent.
Well, when I go on the air here at 3 o'clock in the morning because we have missile attacks, I can tell you the people
Mm,
here watching will tell you there's a lot of humor in the middle of all of it. It's angry humor. It's really
mm,
fucked up dark humor, but
yeah.
it's all within the lanes, and it's because without the humor that kicks in, and it's constant here. My soldier friends have the craziest batches of stories that, as you're sitting there as the one who wasn't in the trench, you're like, "The fuck did I just fucking hear?" And they're laughing their asses off about, like, here's one I'll tell all the crowd that really stunned me. 4 really burly, amazing human beings that have fought more war than I can imagine are angry because one didn't get a shot of someone else's asshole, literally the pucker. And they just kinda looked at him and they said, "Well, yeah, what happened?" And they started telling the story how they were in the trench, and, well, one of them dared that the other one wouldn't do it, and so literally 5 guys sitting at the table were talking about how they had all sent photos around of their own butts, and there was one guy who had died who they didn't get one of his, and he's actually, unfortunately, in real life, is no longer living with us,
Mhm.
and it was so dark that I just sat there kinda like, "Man, I am so at the wrong fucking table tonight," but,
Mm.
it's how they get out the amount of, aggression they have mixed with, to be honest with you, it was actually funny. It was a really funny story the way the only asshole not at the table. Ouch.
Mhm.
So,
Someone in the
we had to
chat
go through
Laura
this
in the
stuff.
chat
Yeah.
asked, "Are you in the middle of missile attacks right now?" I can hear some
Are we in the
sirens.
middle of, no, no, we have whistling going on because we have gale force winds outside, and we had hail yesterday here in late April.
Oh gosh.
It was,
You can't have how in that's so stupid. You shouldn't be having hail
we
on
had
top
a
of
little bit
everything
in the
else.
morning, and then literally I had the balcony window open, and I went, "Okay," and as I did, literally, it was like someone had opened up the ice machine and just was throwing large chunks of ice into my balcony, and, I kinda shut the door because I thought the frogs were coming next after what I'd been writing about. I've been doing eschatology stuff for
Mm.
days and days and days of writing now for, the article I put out yesterday called "The Gospel of Donald."
Mm.
It was
But
fun.
people are gonna love it.
I had to get that story out because I've been watching him. I said, "But what if the Donald had his own book somehow woven into the canon? What would his character be?" And it's like all the ones we're advised not to follow, the various kings that failed, and, a little bit of, Nero, who's, definitely his current, uh, in formation, guy. And we have hold on, we have what was the other one here? Um, One of the people asked you a question up here. I wanna make sure our friends had asked anything they needed. While we do that, just in case that they wanna put it in the comment at the bottom, I wanna say thank you for coming on and talking here with us. I'm gonna invite you again because we're gonna have a lot of chaos. I mean, I'm actually tired from last week's chaos, which is what I've been trying to ponder all weekend. Like, why am I so wiped out? It's
Mm,
like 5 days of Oath Keepers coverage,
mm.
Kash Patel lawsuits, Laura Loomer lawsuits. If you read Laura Loomer's, case file long enough, you're going to wake up and need at least about 2 weeks off, you know?
Oh, it's such a
Ugh.
I feel like The Onion has such a hard time writing satire right now.
Phew.
I mean, I have a hard time doing satirical sketches because it's like, how do I make this more extreme?
How do I take satire and write it back into
Yeah.
satire? Did he really say that? Actually, there's times where I have to look up questions now, right
Oh,
before I
yeah.
go on the air where I go, did he say that? Where's the fucking quote? Hold on,
I
everybody.
literally created a Truth Social account. I don't use it. I just have the account so I can go and fact check when I see, like, a Trump post that I'm like, "There's no way he said that."
There's no way
And
he
then I
said that.
go and look, and usually not every time, but usually I'm like, "Oh, yeah, no, he did. There it is."
I do find some sense of gratification that there are people turning on him. I
Mhm.
do wanna warn our viewers that I think turning to what becomes the next question. What is it they're gonna want
Right.
after? And so kind of a final thought question for now,
Mhm.
because it's Monday. It's Monday. We have a lot of things ahead of us in this week because I know how crazy are they going to fuck us up all week long.
Mm.
Um, I think about off-ramping people a lot, and you're someone who understands that probably better than most, is
Mhm.
what we have to do out here, um, that will create more of a conducive environment for dialogue with people who wanna make change, but like you said, the door isn't open for them, or there's fear, and there's something that they've got to change so significant in their identity that the world they've been in is hostile, but the world that they've been raised with Democrats is even more hostile, and so there's nowhere to go. Um, let's address that, and I think that's a really good, a thing to hand to people on a Monday.
Yeah. I mean, I know that not everybody is going to have the capacity for grace as people start to wake up because you're dealing with people that have enabled and voted and supported for a lot of harm that and
Mhm,
a lot of direct harm. Like people have literally died from these policies. Um that being said, I personally like for me, I'm not going to be someone that hops in the comments and shame somebody when they finally speak out of say like and it also like depends how people change, like if I've seen some people online, like more MAGA, Christian, evangelical types that, like Trump posting the blasphemous Jesus picture that he said was of
mhm,
him as a doctor. I saw a lot of people condemning that. And in the aftermath of that, we're kind of just saying, well, I only voted for him because he was the lesser of the two evils. Like they're trying to distance themselves from the responsibility of this Trump administration. I don't have grace for that. Like, I will call those people out and been like, "You literally said he was God's chosen. Like, what are you talking about? You thought he was the lesser of two equals. You celebrated him." But people that can actually come out and say, "I was wrong and I'm sorry," and actually take ownership and accountability
right,
for that, I can have a ton of grace for that because I used to be in that camp. If my life had gone differently, I could have been maybe a Trump supporter, probably not. But I'm just saying, like, I was also a diehard Republican. I supported a lot of policies that were harmful. Under misinformation and under ignorance, but I still did it. And
yeah,
part of me writing my book and the work I do now is my form of repentance. And I know
mhm,
not everybody is going to have grace for the fact that I was Republican for most of my life until I switched in 2016. Um, but I know a lot of people will welcome me and I can help other people change. And instead of, you know, pointing at, well, you're an idiot because you fell for it, I can say, hey, I was an idiot too. And I also fell for it. And we can change together. Like when you know
sure,
better, you do better. And now that you know better, I will give you the space to actually learn, unlearn, and do better. But the do better is a key part, Like if there's people
right,
that are
right,
turning on Trump now, but they're still gonna vote for Republicans that would basically put up those exact same policies, that's not change. Like that you
Yeah,
still
the
call those
shift
people
from
out.
one pariah to another,
Right.
just hasn't been revealed yet, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that we have to remember, and I'm definitely guilty of this, is, like, the way I usually will come at someone is if they're doing that to someone else. I don't just wander up someone who makes a comment about their religious views, their cultural views. If they're just making a comment that's not harming somebody and just completely different, but I'm probably gonna move on. It's
Yeah.
when they bear down into somebody, when I know they're hurting somebody, someone who doesn't deserve it, I tend to wanna turn the pain up a bit,
Mhm.
especially with a bit of humor, if possible.
Right.
Um, and yet I've had to kind of squared against what I've been saying with our friends, that if we're going to bring on cult expert like Stephen Hassan to say how do you off-road MAGA into something more functional, and then we don't want to do it once we're given a menu. We're like, what if you do this and this and this? It makes it hard, and we do all those things because it feels good. You know,
Right.
um, then we
Well, because I
too have something to learn at.
right, because I think at the end of the day, we want people to change. We want
Yeah,
people to join the resistance, to, be on the side of democracy, and I'm not going to shame somebody when they fight like, on the day they actually decide to do the right thing, I'd be like, I wish you would have come here sooner, but I'm gonna give you a chance to actually change." And I will say too, as frustrating as it is, and there are days that I don't have the patience for it, but a lot of times they'll change on one thing, and they'll still be very problematic on a lot of
sure,
other issues, but that one thing will be the catalyst that eventually lets them question everything else. Like, for me, like, 2016, I did not vote for Donald Trump, but it took me 2 more years before I was able to unlearn all the indoctrination I had on what Democrats were,
right,
right?
right.
And that's a and I'm not, like, the biggest Democrat fan either, like, I don't think I feel like they haven't done a lot of great
Well,
things.
I'm an independent who calls them a different kind of monarchy. So
Right. I mean, right now, they're the least fascist, so
right,
they've got my vote in the meantime, but,
right,
I
right.
I just think it takes time to unlearn indoctrination, I just
Well, I think
don't give
humor,
up
one of the
hope on
reasons well, one of the things I think that you're able to contribute is a sense of humor to it really goes a long way,
people.
and especially sometimes if you can get the humor where it flips the person who normally would fall on the other side of that fence, not very happy
Mhm.
about it. If they go, "Oh, now that I think about Donald Trump is the idiot today. Oh, ha, ha, ha," and they laugh with you because they see the thing you pointed out, or Pete Hegseth or Cash Patel, whoever it is. If and I've done this a couple times well enough that I too put it in the playbook for later. That hey, that just worked. I just took one of the true believers and got them to laugh against their own codified beliefs.
Mhm.
And I tell myself, don't get too hungry right now, kid. You're gonna go for more of it, and it's gonna bomb. Sometimes you can though. Sometimes you can get someone to really start questioning their beliefs with a bit of humor. The late Bill Hicks talked about, there's only one word in the Bible that makes me think that, I could probably undo your argument. Yeah. It's a real simple one. It's in the Bible. It's dinosaurs. Oh, it's not in there? Yeah. Oh, interesting. So shit like
Mhm.
that. The way he would, so the great God, he could create all things, but couldn't put the word dinosaurs anywhere in the mix. Um, Stuff that, when I was, in my 20s, I would see comedians who could undermine the Jerry Falwells and the kind of moral majority and pick apart
Mhm.
the obvious hypocrisy, but I was already in that audience of someone who already did believe it. I wasn't someone within the flock who went, "You can't speak against the reverend. Why would you say such a thing? That's so
Mhm.
untoward of you." And we have to have that now. It's
Yeah.
worse than ever.
Yeah. I think, humor can disarm people too, and it can have them maybe receive a message that otherwise they would have their guard up for.
Why don't conservatives do better at humor? What is my well, I think we have a common belief, but what do you think is the reason why they can't typically?
Because they don't believe in nuance. Like, I
Mm,
feel like comedy really good comedy, is nuanced and it recognizes multiple things
Yeah.
at once. I mean, it can satirize extremes for sure.
Right, right.
But I think one reason why conservatives don't is one, like their belief system is based on a black and white ideology. You either have good people or evil people, and it's really hard to make art out of something that doesn't like actually replicate life.
Right. What about also someone said, a couple times, a long time ago, said, lack of empathy, that all good humor has a certain kinda empathy in it,
Mhm.
that where the joke falls, like, who's supposed to fall on their ass and who's supposed to deserve it,
Right.
you know?
And
Like,
yeah, I
that's
think conservative
upside down in
humor
the conservative world.
yeah, conservative humor punches down
Yeah.
a lot. Right, and I think good humor punches up.
Well, I want you to have a killer fucking week and may nothing really crazy happen around you.
Knock on wood. Well, same
What
for
strange things
you.
we have to wish to each other, because I think of you guys in occupied territory. I'm just in Ukraine. I'm in we're dealing with an occupation issue to the we have immigration issues
Oh gosh.
to the
Oh,
border side, if you hadn't heard. Um
yeah,
but
I did hear.
we have folks who know how to deal with it. We have folks who know how to fight drones. We have folks who have cards now, more cards than they know what to fucking do with.
Mm,
And the world has inverted, and it's one of the reasons why when I do these programs, we have to come open up the microphones for our friends. And I want to thank we have 53 people in here currently watching live on a Monday in the morning, no less.
yeah.
And I just want to go back to sleep as if it's Friday and tomorrow's the weekend, but it's not. So we have articles coming, and one of them is going to be my view of Christian nationalism from a counterterrorism point of view. But I think I'm going to pour over some of what we talked about here, and I'm going to go watch a lot of your videos to get in a much better Monday mood, because having some humor is key and vital to everybody. If you are not following April's account, make sure that you are. If you're not a paid subscriber, do you think she wants to do this for absolutely gratis? Come on. And I'm a book pimp's pimp. Go buy that book. It's right
Yeah.
there on her, right there on her shoulder. I do
Oh,
not
yeah.
have a copy here in
Star
Kiev,
Spangled
but
Jesus.
we can work out a copy of that here in Kiev, I'm sure. And make sure you tell your friends, and we will see you guys soon. Take care of yourself,
Yeah.
April.
Thank
Be
you. You
strong, be
too.
funny as hell, and you'll make us laugh.
I shall
See you
try.
soon. До
Bye.
побачення.